Well, hello, and welcome to another lesson of the Content Modeling Weekly course. I'm Marcelo Lewin, the Headless Creator. As always, get a hold of me right there, Marcelo at headlesscreator.com. For those of you watching live, if you have questions, just type them in the comments bar and I'll get to them as soon as I can. Now, in this four-part series that I've taken you back to the basics, we talked about many principles of content modeling. In today's lesson, we'll focus on the last three principles, including make it author friendly, think content governance, and think authoring workflows. Now, before we jump into those, I just want to do a quick review of those three parts. Now, I'm not going to go into the details. I just want you to be aware of these principles, and then we'll jump into the last three. You can go back and watch all the lessons. They're all on demand at headlesscreator.com and get into the details and look at the mirror boards. Now, having said that, in part one of this series, we covered the following lessons. We talked about principles. Sorry, I lost it there for a second. We covered the following principles. Design it first. Remember to use Miro or whatever tool you want to use, but design it first. Don't jump into a headless CMS with your content model. Number two, work with a diverse team. Don't work on your own. Don't work just with a developer. Don't work just with a content author. Work with a diverse team, and then look at that lesson to see who should be included in that team. Make it scalable. Don't just create what they need today. Think of the future. What are they going to need? What kind of content will they need in the future? What delivery channels will this content go to? Keep it updated. Make sure that whenever you're changing your content model, you are updating it in the original source where you designed it. For example, the mirror board. So you want to keep that updated. And think single source of truth. Reusable content is extremely important. It'll help with content maintenance. And that was part one. Part two, we spoke about use design as a guide. Do not ignore design, but only use it as a guide. Do not create a content model that reflects that page. Create a content model that delivers content to whatever page and design they want, but the content model does not reflect that design. That content model should outlast multiple design iterations. Model intent and not design. What do I mean by that? You have a red box. What does that red box mean? You're not going to allow them to create red boxes in your headless CMS. What you're going to do is you're going to figure out, what does the red box mean? Maybe it's a warning box. Great. Now you model the intent. Now they can create warning messages in the headless CMS, which could be reflected in various ways in different channels. And in the future, warning boxes will still be the same, whether they're red or blue or whatever they talk about. We also spoke about keep design separate. You're going to have to model design, most likely, because they're going to want to control part of it in your headless CMS, but keep it separate from your content types, because you want to be able to throw those design content types away later, but the main content will always remain there. And of course, we live in an omni-channel world, so you want to make it omni-channel friendly. So you want to be able to take that article and be able to deliver it to the mobile app, deliver it to the website, deliver it to an IoT device, whatever that may be. Okay, let's see, I want to make sure. Okay, and part three, sorry, I lost track there of my outline here. So that was part two. Part three, we spoke about don't waste content types. Many headless CMSs will limit how many content types you can create. So that's going to be striking that balance between making it fully scalable and not wasting content types. Whenever possible, if your headless CMS supports it, use components for structures. That's reusable fields you can reuse in content types. And then, of course, make it developer friendly. Make sure that it's easy for developers to query the content and it won't bring down your site. Again, you can go into all of those lessons, part 1, 2, and 3, which are available on demand already, and get into the details and listen to all of that. Today, we're going to jump into make it author friendly, think content governance, and think authoring tools. So with that said, let's go ahead and start with the first part. So let's talk about making it author friendly. Let me move some things around here just so I could make it friendly for me here to present. All right. So what do I mean by that? So let's look at this content model. Here I have a content model. We're going to jump into the headless CMS so we can experience what the author experiences. Here's a very scalable content model, which I really like because it really is scalable. It has a blog content type. The blog has an author. The author is actually a person, which means we can reuse a person as a blog author, but maybe as a podcast host or as a webinar presenter, whatever it may be. But we have a person content type, and we can wrap it around that. We can wrap that person around, give it a blog specific bio, right? We can then create, for example, another content type called podcast host, and then it could be a person one to person, and then add specific things to that podcast, right? Like a podcast bio or whatever. Very, very scalable. And then the person has social media, phones, emails, addresses. Again, very scalable because we can add multiple addresses. We can add multiple social media links, multiple phone numbers, multiple emails. The address can have a state, which is scalable, so we can add more states. It can have a country, multiple countries we can add. Fantastic. This is really great. The problem with this, even though it's scalable and I really like this, the problem with this is from an authoring perspective, it's a nightmare to manage content, right? Because remember, most headless CMSs, a content type represents a screen. So that means that to create a blog article entry, if they're going to create a blog article, then they're going to add an author if the author doesn't exist. But to add an author, you got to add a person. Now we're 3 screens deep. Let's see, here we're saying addresses is optional, so we don't have to. But here, you're going to have to add emails because we need to use a person must have emails. But maybe we don't need the email for the blog, but they're going to have to add an email. Same with phone, right? We definitely don't need a phone, but we need it for something else. But in this case, we don't need phone. And social media is optional. So we're going to have to create a blog entry, a blog author, a person, and at a minimum, an email. Now, if you want to add address, you have to another screen address, and then you have to add a state and a country. So yes, this is extremely scalable. It will support single source of truth, but it's going to be pretty much a nightmare for the author to manage. This one is not as scalable. It'll support partial single source of truth because you may have to repeat some content, but very easy for an author to manage, right? We have a blog that has an author, and here's the author, and there's the information. For the blog author, we have full name, bio, contact email, Twitter, and LinkedIn. That's all we need. Now, I'm not saying this is the way to model this, right? What I'm saying is you're going to have to strike a balance when you're creating your content model, right? You're going to strike a balance between all of these principles. That's just how it works. It's not like, oh, I stick to that principle, make it developer friendly, and we're good. No, you're going to have to make it developer friendly, but you're going to have to make it author friendly. That's the world we live in Headless CMS, right? So you're going to have to strike a balance between this model, which is fully scalable, and this model, which is partially scalable. So let's experience both real quick. I'm here in Contentful. I'm going to jump in real quick, and I have all the content types in there. The reason I put 01s in 02 because 01 is the fully scalable content model. 02 is not the fully scalable content model. So let's go in real quick, and let's create